This is Carolyn Hutchins, and you are listening to Sharky James with the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. Also, the FA-18 Super Hornet is absolutely the coolest jet ever.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Fujifilm, Calibrite, Saramonic, and Kupo. Further details and discount codes later in the show. Welcome to the PetaPixel Photography Podcast, episode 372. Wow, no mention of mirrorless? Interesting. In this episode, smartphones will never truly replace your camera. Canon limits your options. Fujifilm's new X-H2 and 5612. Maybe get permission first before doing this. Tamron announces its 20-40 2.8. This Sony card will set you back. Sigma ditches more lenses. And AC/DC brings a new update. All that and more in episode 372 of the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for opening the show. I greatly appreciate it, sister. If you particularly enjoy aviation photography, you will no doubt love the Instagram account of Florida-based photographer Carolyn Hutchins. This longtime listener of our show, whose cool day job is at Gatorland in Orlando, has a passion for aiming her camera skyward. Her photographs are often exhibited. She has some really sweet prints available, and we still like her, even though she thinks the F-18 is cooler than the F-16, which it is not. It just isn't. Fight me. So to check out her wonderful photography, hit her Instagram account, which is Carolyn527, or head on over to carolynhutchins.com. You'll find the links for that in the show notes. Hutchins is spelled Hutchins, by the way. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us here in episode 372 of the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. We appreciate you all so much, and thank you all for subscribing, rating, and reviewing us in iTunes or wherever else you listen to us. And as always, we appreciate hitting that subscribe button. Do it now, please, so you don't miss a single episode, as well as telling all your friends on social media and elsewhere, and helping to get the word out about this show. Okay, with that, I'm your host, Sharky James. Let's hit it. Whenever someone says that cameras as we know them with interchangeable lenses and viewfinders and all that will die thanks to the quality of smartphones getting better and better every year, I just have to laugh. Now, don't get me wrong. My iPhone 13 Pro Max is pretty darn amazing. It's technically the camera I use the most because it's always with me and it does a pretty darn good job. And while the image quality is great and will only get better as new smartphones are released, it's simply not going to replace an actual camera. Good luck shooting a football game from the sidelines with your smartphone and coming away with amazing shots. It's just not going to happen. Also, the form factor alone absolutely sucks. They're just not comfortable to hold for long periods of time. An actual camera with a grip to hold on to or a monopod attached to a long lens wins the day every darn day. Now, where I can actually see things going is pulling stills from video and photography, and I'm doing air quotes here, being more of a loosey-goosey term. Search out my old friend and Sony artisan Patrick Murphy Racy's excellent YouTube channel, and you'll see what he's been able to do with overcranking the shutter speed when shooting daytime sports. That's the key, daytime, but that's going to change over time. Getting crazy high shutter speeds requires a whole lot of light, as you know, or you're pulling frames with tons of motion blur. A little is fine, it conveys motion. A lot is not. And yes, that rhymed. It happens. Anyhow, tech giant Qualcomm's VP of Product Management for Cameras, Judd Heap, thinks that AI technology will help smartphones overtake DSLRs in the next 3 to 5 years. DSLRs, specifically. No mention of mirrorless. In an interview with Android Authority, Heap told them, quote, "We're 3 to 5 years away from reaching the holy grail of AI photography. Going forward in the future, we see a lot more AI capability to understand the scene, to understand the difference between skin and hair and fabric and background and that sort of thing. And all those pixels being handled differently in real time, not just post-processing a couple of seconds after the snapshot is taken, but in real time during like a camcorder video shoot. Imagine a world from the future where you'd say, I want the picture to look like this National Geographic scene, and the AI engine would say, okay, I'm going to adjust the colors and the texture and the white balance and everything to look like and feel like this image you just showed me, end quote. He's probably right. And you know what? Your average person with a smartphone will be ridiculously happy about that. Not only is everyone a photographer, everyone will look like a pretty darn good photographer thanks to AI. Not all the time, but enough times to matter. Especially if they snap a photo and get some enhancements added in from technology like we're seeing with Midjourney, DALL-E, and others. Everyone is suddenly not just an image maker, but a prolifically good one. We're going to be simply awash in great imagery going forward. There's no doubt about it. We kind of already are. I think that's something to wrap our minds around now. If your business is photography and or videography, it's going to need to adapt to these realities. If image making is not your business, then you can utilize these technologies and just have fun in the process. And I envy you. That's the way to go. Heap goes on to say that, quote, the processing in Snapdragon in a smartphone is 10 times better than what you can find on the biggest and baddest Nikon and Canon cameras. And that's why we're able to really push the barrier on image quality. Because even though we have a small lens and a small image sensor, we're doing many, many times more processing than what's even capable in a DSLR, end quote. You know, I find it interesting that he thinks of capable cameras being DSLRs. No mention of mirrorless, and his examples are Nikon and Canon. No mention of number 2 in the entire camera business, Sony. So while I think he knows what he's talking about, his examples are definitely a bit outdated. He has got to be an old guy like me and possibly older. No doubt about it. Now, you may recall that this past May of 2022, the CEO of Sony's semiconductor division stated that smartphone cameras will exceed the quality of SLRs by 2024. Again, with the old-timey, non-mirrorless reference, which is particularly goofy considering it came from a Sony guy, but anyhow, I digress. If you've listened to this show for even a little bit of its nearly 8 years of existence now, you know that I have long been calling for camera companies to catch a clue from smartphone makers and integrate more dynamic firmware in them. How great would it be to be able to switch between the safe, standard firmware version, you know, with the whole menu system as you see it now, switching between that and something that is more of a playground, something that's a bit on the edge with AI features that you're adding to it as they come up with it, or maybe third-party people come up with stuff, and you can load that into your camera and do all kinds of great stuff, like you can do in your smartphone right now. I think that would really close the gap right there. Camera companies are just ceding that to the smartphone makers, and I think that is a huge mistake. That has got to change. Next. A company has a right to defend its patents, full stop. However, that doesn't mean it can't license its technology in an effort to help serve its customers, right? I'm talking specifically about Canon's decision to go after third-party lens makers for creating offerings in its newer RF mount for the company's mirrorless R system. A move that's not sitting very well with consumers, and in my opinion, that is for a very good reason. People want options. Options are good. And when a company makes a move that other companies choose not to make for good reason, it really stands out. I don't know about you, but it's nice being able to choose from a selection of lenses from a particular camera maker along with a number of other companies. We call them third-party lens makers, right? Companies that often make lenses that are just as good or better than the ones from your camera company of choice, like Sigma and Tamron, for instance. Also, there's lenses that would simply never exist, like that sweet 24mm Laowa probe lens that they kindly lent me earlier this year. A company like Canon would never get around to making a lens like that. It is just too specific. Given this recent news, if I was starting fresh in a new system, this kind of thing would make me exclude Canon from the list of choices, unfortunately. They make wonderful gear, and as you know, I'm a Fuji guy, but if I weren't, as of October 2022 here, I'd likely go Sony. I don't care about full frame anymore because it's mostly irrelevant now, but Sony would be the choice if I had to go full frame mirrorless. Then Nikon. And that's hard to say because I think it's certainly more risky to get into the Nikon system over Canon, given how huge Canon is. And we've gone over that ad nauseum over the years. But Canon went ahead and made this choice to limit the options that its users have by targeting others who develop for RF mount, and that's just hard to support. I don't like limited options. Anyhow, this past August of 2022, a rep from third-party lens maker Viltrox told a prospective customer that Canon had informed the company that their creation of RF mount lenses violates their patents and they need to stop. A spokesperson from Viltrox told the PetaPixel mothership that they immediately stopped selling their RF mount products, and while Canon was silent about this at the time, the company has since confirmed this via Canon Germany to Photographics magazine. This has also since been confirmed to the mothership by Canon USA as well. The statement given by Canon Germany mentioned autofocus lenses specifically, but Viltrox and others have put a complete production stop on all lenses in RF mount, not just those with AF, just in case. It's worth noting that Canon doesn't license its RF mount to any third-party lens makers, and that companies like Viltrox and others reverse engineer the technology in order to create products that'll work on Canon RF mount bodies. Or they did. This is something that technology companies have done for decades now, and usually without being sued, because the company whose gear they're developing for realizes that A, they can't completely serve their customers' needs, especially with oddball gear like that Laowa probe lens, and B, the more robust the system is, no matter who's developing for it, the bigger the user base will grow. This has been proven over and over again throughout the years. But Canon, for whatever reason, wants to limit the options available to consumers to just the lenses they make. Now, Sony, on the other hand, licenses its E-mount and has for a long time now. Same with Nikon and Fuji and a bunch of others. Just look at the new Tamron 70 to 300mm f4.5 to 6.3 in mirrorless Z-mount. They licensed Tamron to make that lens, presumably because they know that, especially in their case, they need as many compelling reasons for people to get into mirrorless Z as they can. The more people that buy a Nikon Z-based body, the more chances you have at them, well, upgrading the body to another down the road, buying Nikon Z lenses and accessories, etc. If you lose them to another company, you've lost them. So what Canon has done is forced their customers to buy what tends to be pricier Canon lenses rather than any number of cheaper options from the third-party lens makers. And thanks to that decision, not only are you going to be paying more than you need to, there's a slew of lenses that you won't be able to get your hands on that'll be available for Sony E, Nikon Z, Fuji X, etc. I think that Canon should seriously rethink this decision. I just don't think it's very wise. Consumers are not happy about this. Rightfully so. Next. If your camera uses CF Express Type A cards and speed, durability, and high capacity is what you need, you might want to have a look at Sony's new 640 gigabyte CF Express Type A tough card, but ouch, the price. It's a lot. Shipping in early December 2022, this card, which is clearly meant for those shooting video or people who don't like changing out their cards very often, I guess, is the latest in this particular line. It's 4 times the capacity of what ProGrade Digital currently offers, twice that of Lexar's, and they are not cheap at all. They're also not even close to the more than 1 terabyte of capacity that you get with CF Express Type B cards. They have an 800 megabyte per second read speed, a 700 megabyte per second write speed, and while that's all fine and dandy, if you need one of these cards, you're going to be shelling out a whopping $1,250 US. Yeah, that's painful. But if you need it, I guess. Next. I think I've mentioned this before, but back when I was a photojournalist, I was one of the first at a newspaper in all of Arizona to shoot video. I bought a small pro camcorder, some audio gear, and I made it happen. I'm a storyteller after all. The larger newspaper in the area tried for an entire year to get me to come work for them, and finally, I made the leap. I gave in. In fact, I was hired primarily to shoot video. Stills came second. Anyhow, what I wouldn't have done back then to have the kind of gear that we have available today, right? Like the new V-Mic Mini 2 from Saramonic. As I record this, it's just $69 US, but if you use our promo code PetaPixel20 over at Saramonicusa.com, boom, you're down to just $55.20. That's Saramonic USA.com, by the way. This is the company's next generation version of the camera mountable shotgun mic that so many people love. They sell a ton of them, I understand, and for good reason too. Bring broadcast quality audio to your camera, your mobile devices, your recorders, and more with this rugged, lightweight, battery-free, and easy-to-use mic. It comes with a dual Rycote lyre suspension mount, a furry windscreen, which is fun to play with, both TRS and TRRS output cables, and the sound is incredible, because it's Saramonic after all. The V-Mic Mini 2 is so inexpensive, especially with our promo code, and it's so compact that it just makes sense to have it as part of your kit, so you're good to go when you need it. Next. One thing I bet you remember me saying for years now is that if you're going to be charging for your photography, you want to make sure that you get your colors right? Unless you want a bridezilla or somebody's parents biting your head off, that bridesmaid dress had better look like it actually does, and same thing with little Johnny's sports uniform. Think about it. The bride and everyone else at the wedding knows that awful teal that those dresses were, so awful teal they had better be in the photos that you upload and in your prints. And since everybody knows what Dodger blue looks like, well, you guys get the idea. It has to be right. That's why you've got end-to-end solutions to fix all of this from Calibrite. You probably know them from their X-Rite products. And for a limited time over at Calibrite.com, you'll get yourself a free Color Checker Classic Mini when you buy the brand new Color Checker Display Pro. The former is that little thing with the color squares that you place in your scene, you take a photo of so your editing software can adjust the colors. And the latter is a device that calibrates your monitor. One without the other, and you don't quite get there. So hurry on over to Calibrite.com and snag this sweet deal while supplies last. That's CALIBRITE.com. Cal, then the letter I, and Bright, spelled completely incorrectly.com. That, or just hit the link in the show notes. Next. I didn't get a chance to talk about this until now, but Fujifilm recently released a body that's causing a lot of buzz, the new X-H2. As you know, Fujifilm has sponsored this show for a little over 3 years now, and I'm a massive Fujifilm fanboy. Everybody knows that. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the details about this sweet body that I hope to get my hands on soon, just as we would with any other camera. The X-H2 features a 40.2 megapixel APS-C sensor, and yes, that's the very highest resolution of any X-series Fuji camera. It's also the world's first APS-C camera capable of shooting 8K 30p Apple ProRes internally. And okay, I know it's late 2022 and all, but it still astounds me that we've got cameras capable of shooting 8K in the body. If you know what all goes into making that happen, all without causing your camera to overheat, that is pretty darn impressive. The engineers that work for camera companies are just mind-blowingly smart. I remember when you had to pipe video out the HDMI port to something like an Atomos Shogun or whatever it was to make that kind of stuff happen. So we live in great times is what I'm saying here. Now, Fuji says that this new 40.2 megapixel X-Trans CMOS 5 HR sensor paired with a special image processing algorithm yields astonishing image quality, that's their words, without doing crazy things to the signal to noise ratio. And if you ask anybody who got their hands on this body at the company's Fujikina and X Summit events in New York City last month or since then, they can tell you just how sweet this body is. It is a winner. The base ISO of the XH2 is 125, and amazingly, the electronic shutter can shoot as quickly as 1/180,000th of a second. A full 2.5 stops faster than the company's previous fastest, 1/32,000th of a second. Imagine what you could do with that. A whole lot is what you could do. That's insane. This body is also the first in the X series lineup to feature pixel shift multi-shot, which takes advantage of the camera's IBIS to shift that new sensor up to 20 times, yielding an image that's a whopping 160 megapixels. Seriously, I feel like you wake up one day and you're living in a world where the camera is no longer the limitation. You've got pretty much all you need to make the images that you've been wanting to make. Now, as for autofocus, even without a stacked sensor, the company says that its subject detection AF, which is based on deep learning technology, is able to detect and track animals, birds, which I think are also animals, right? Cars, motorcycles, bicycles, airplanes, and trains. If you've used a camera that has this capability after using one that doesn't, you know that suddenly your keeper rate goes way, way up. Shots you were missing before now, you get because the camera's AF isn't hunting like it would otherwise. It knows that that thing flapping its wings is likely your subject, especially if you're moving the camera to keep it in frame. It just knows. Super simple explanation, I know, but you guys get the idea. Modern software in cameras is way better, and I'll take it. The XH2 has IBIS, as I mentioned. Its electronic viewfinder, also known as its EVF, has 5.76 million dots with 0.8 time magnification and a refresh rate of up to 120 frames per second. And now I think it's a good time to point out that you just don't hear anyone complain about EVFs anymore, do you? No, you don't. I remember that was one of the concerns that people had when switching to mirrorless from a DSLR. In fact, it was one of the biggest reasons that they cited. You're just so used to seeing an image that's bounced off a mirror, then through a pentaprism to your eye, rather than essentially seeing it on a screen. But guess what? It was just fine back then, and it has been many years now, and it is way, way better. Besides, many people are shooting by using the LCD on the back of their camera rather than holding the camera to their eye anyhow. The rear LCD on the XH2 has 1.62 million dots and flips out and around, by the way, and is perfectly fine. I find myself using the LCD on my Fuji cameras most of the time, unless I'm shooting sports. It's just not so easy to do looking down at a screen. You gotta have it to your eye. It's another point of contact. It steadies things. It's just preferred. It's the way to go when you're shooting sports and fast action, etc. It's also a lot easier to track a subject that way. I never thought I would mostly use the LCD screen to shoot, but I think that's a function of using my iPhone for so many years where the only option is using the screen because you're not putting that to your eye. So there you have it. I've been trained out of decades of shooting with a camera to my eye. You win, technology. Now, the XH2 has 79 weather-sealed points for what the company says is a high level, that's their words, of dust and moisture resistance. And you can shoot in temps down to 14 degrees Fahrenheit, also known as minus 10 degrees Celsius. Man, 14 sounds cold enough as it is, but minus 10 is how it feels to me. Celsius or not, I get cold. I don't know if you saw it on my social media accounts, and this is a bit of a tangent here, but I got those sweet gloves from the Heat Company. They sent me them last winter. They are warm, even without the heat pack thingies in them. Being able to pull back the mitten part, and there's like a magnet in the back so you can flip it back and it just stays there. Being able to do that and then use your fingers like you normally would, gloved, of course, is pretty darn sweet. Now I need a whole outfit made of that stuff, and I'd be good to go. Nice and toasty. I'm an indoor cat, as you know. Gotta stay warm if you're heading out into the elements to shoot, or you might as well just stay home. Layering. Layering is what you want to do. Hit YouTube, and there are tons and tons of videos from outdoor people and outdoor photographers, etc., on how to properly, and that's the key word there, properly layer. Then suddenly you're enjoying shooting in the winter, whereas before you're like, I'll wait till the spring. Anyhow, as for card slots, the Fuji X-H2 has two, of course, as any serious camera these days has. Fight me. One is CF Express Type B, and the other is the UHS Mark II SD card variety. And as Fuji points out, if you're going to push this body to the max, you're going to be wanting to write to that faster CF Express Type B card slot. I don't know how much more it would cost to have both be that type, but that would be pretty darn cool. I like it when there's two of the same slot, like I have in my XT2, XT3, and XT4. I realize, though, that we have tons and tons of SD cards, so it's nice to have the option, I guess. Anyhow, that and buying new cards when you already have a bunch of the SD variety is not fun, so whatever. Now, on the video side of things, the X-H2 has an improved heat dissipation system inherited from the X-H2S, enabling it to capture that astounding 8K 422 10-bit color at up to 30p internally for up to 30 minutes at a bitrate of 100 megabytes per second. That's just astounding. In addition to that, it can capture 4K video that's oversampled from 8K. You can record in Apple ProRes 422 HQ, ProRes 422, and ProRes 422 LT, as well as ProRes 422 Proxy, which is likely to be what many people are going to use while editing those massive 8K files that your computer is choking on. Fujifilm says that due to the new X-Trans CMOS 5HR sensor, this body can shoot in up to 2 times digital zoom with little to no loss in resolution. That's their words when shooting 4K. And if you use an HDMI recorder such as those from Atomos and others, the X-H2 can pipe out 12-bit 8K 30p RAW video as Apple ProRes or Blackmagic RAW. And thanks to the new F-Log2 flat profile for color grading later, this camera has a video dynamic range of 13 plus stops. If all that sounds great to you, you can get yourself a new Fuji X-H2 for $1,995 US for the body only, or $2,499.95 when bundled with the XF 16 to 80mm f4R OIS in a kit. And if you do, and you use Amazon, etc., consider first hitting my link over at lensshark.com if you wouldn't mind. You don't pay any extra, and I get a little bit of money, and it helps keep the lights on here and feeds my family, and I thank you so much. Next. If you're a Fuji shooter and do a whole lot of portraiture, then you're likely doing cartwheels over the announcement of the company's new Fujinon XF 56mm f1.2R WR, a lens that works out to be a classic 85. Well, it's an 84mm because 56 times the 1.5x crop because Fuji is a crop system, APS-C, and you get 84. It's pretty darn close to 85, your classic 85mm portraiture lens. It's constructed of 13 elements in 8 groups, including 2 aspherical elements and 1 extra low dispersion ED element. And Fuji says that the 8 elements in the focusing group use the same high refractive technology that you'll find in the company's heralded cinema lenses, which minimize and suppress all kinds of aberration, including both chromatic and spherical aberration. And as a result, you get edge-to-edge sharpness and the silky smooth bokeh that so many desire. Fuji refers to it as stunning bokeh in regards to this lens. And if you've seen the sample images as well as from those who have shot this lens, you know it's true. That's likely thanks in part to its 11-bladed aperture diaphragm, which also yields a near-perfect circle according to the company, even when stopped down to f5.6 for you bokeh ball fans. Also, thanks to that high refractive technology, light bleeds and highlights are minimized, and as a result, you get better image quality and subject detail. If you shoot with a lesser lens, compare the two side by side and you'll be like, yeah, ooh, light bleeds completely suck. You don't want them if you can avoid them, but it's going to cost you a bit. This lens can focus as closely as 41 centimeters, also known as about 16 inches. The front element has a fluorine coating to help repel water, smudging, etc. The AF is driven by what Fuji says is an evolved direct current DC motor for speed and accuracy, and thanks to the use of a bearing mechanism, friction is greatly reduced and the motor is super quiet. A huge plus, of course, if you're shooting video. It weighs in at just 15.69 ounces, that's 440 grams, is 3 inches long, also known as 7.62 centimeters. The lens barrel is weather resistant in 9 points, and like the new XH2, can shoot as low as 14 degrees Fahrenheit, also known as minus 10 degrees Celsius, because it would be goofy if your camera could shoot in those cold conditions, but you don't have a lens that could do that. So there's that. And if all this sounds great to you, the new Fujinon XF 56mm f1.2R WR from Fujifilm is available right now for $999.95. A good chunk of change, but this looks to be a great lens. Next. Third-party lens maker Tamron has just announced their new 20 to 40mm f2.8 Di Mark III VXD model A062 lens for full-frame Sony E-mount bodies. A lens the company says was created in aggressive pursuit, that's their words, of portability, and in fact, it's the smallest and lightest in its class. A class defined by Tamron as a fast aperture zoom lens for Sony full-frame E-mount. That's specific. This new 20 to 40 is being heralded by the company as being innovative due to its performance, size, and weight characteristics, coming in at just 3.4 inches long, that's 8.64 centimeters, and 12.9 ounces, also known as 0.81 pounds. And Tamron says that it's well balanced even when used on a camera with a grip, as well as stabilizers. It's made up of 12 elements and 11 groups, including 4 low dispersion elements, 2 glass molded aspherical elements, and 1 hybrid aspherical element. And the company says this configuration yields high quality images in a compact size. It also has a 9-bladed aperture diaphragm for soft circular bokeh, an aperture range of f2.8 through f22, can focus as closely as 6.7 inches, it's roughly 17 centimeters, and it has a maximum magnification ratio of 1 to 3.8 at the wide end. The AF of this lens is driven by the company's excellent VXD linear motor system, allowing for high performance AF speed as well as precision, and Tamron says that as a result, it's able to respond quickly across the entire focus range, all while providing support for Sony's camera tracking and doing so quietly. Something that's appreciated especially when you're shooting video, but we'll take it for stills as well. The quieter you can be, the better, I say. On the outside, this lens has improved texture and scratch resistance according to the company. Their fairly usual 67mm filter thread size. Again, just get 82s in a quality set of step-up rings or a filter box, whatever. It's moisture resistant, it has a fluorine coating on the front to repel smudges, etc. And it can make use of the fast hybrid AF as well as IAF in Sony E-mount bodies, which feature those. features. Now, if all of that sounds great to you, the new Tamron 20 to 40mm f2.8 Di Mark III VXD will be available starting October 27th of 2022, although it's available for pre-order right now for $699 US. A good chunk of change, no doubt, but like most of Tamron's glass, this looks to be a pretty sweet lens and has a very workable range, especially if you're doing things like street photography, vlogging, etc. It's kind of right there in the sweet spot, I think. Next. As you know, because I remind you, I've been a Kupo user forever now, for a long time, long before they even sponsor this show. And I wish I had that PetaPixel 20 code back then, because I could have saved a whole lot of money. I spent thousands of dollars on stuff, like so many of you guys do now over at KupoGrip.com. That's KUPO grip.com. I see so many of you on social media upping your offerings to clients by shooting videos well and doing those really sweet slider shots on Rails. And Kupo's got you covered, of course, from their sweet new lightweight yet incredibly strong slider stands, which each support over 79.2 pounds, and they can be used for way more than just supporting your slider. It has a memory collar to return the stand to a previous height, 2 leveling legs, and so much more. Then there's their awesome universal track ends for the Big Brother sliders, camera dollies. Sliders have a fixed length, while dolly tracks can be as long as you need them to be. They can curve and all kinds of cool things. The Kupo universal track ends feature 2 2-inch diameter couplers and a TV MP adapter in the center to mount any 5/8-inch baby pin or a junior 1/1-inch receiver by first removing the locking knob. There's so much more to know about them, so you gotta have to check them out on their website. Now, if you need to mount casters to your light stand, what you really need is Kupo's brilliant new square stand caster adapters. They're amazing. They come in a set of 3 and they are ridiculously easy to mount. Then you're ready to roll. Literally. I know. I'm sorry, but I did it. Check out Kupo's nearly 200-page catalog online, and if you see something you like, use that PetaPixel 20 code and save some serious cash. Next. Now, last time around, I told you about Fujifilm's Create With Me monthly photo competition where you can win sweet Fuji gear. Round 6 was editorial, and as it's now October 2022, Round 7's theme is fashion. Select Fujifilm creators are sharing their insight and secrets, so maybe you can pick up that missing piece to win this round, or show them that you've already got the right stuff and take that prize. To check out the details, hit the link in the show notes, or just head on over to the bit.ly.com/createwithmenow link that I set up. It's hard to believe, but this year marks 10 years of Fujifilm's X-Mount. I've been a Fuji shooter for years now, leaving the heavier stuff in the dust, and I'm not looking back. I'm having more fun shooting with this system as well. Fujifilm heard about my switches, and it's now been 3+ years that they've been sponsoring the show, and we thank them for that. They rock. Also, don't forget their 52 weeks of free education over at bit.ly.com/52learn. Next. The gall of people, I tell you. I'm sure things like this have probably happened for a long time now, and we're only hearing about them thanks to the proliferation of social media. But man, it is annoying when people just take it upon themselves to do things because they can. Not just permanent things like etching your name into rocks and all that, but goofy things like dyeing a waterfall blue, as a couple did in Brazil for a gender reveal party. And I think it's a cautionary tale for photographers and videographers, because it is always important to keep in mind, I think, that it is not worth it to mess with things for a photograph or a video, especially when your actions screwed things up for other people. Remember, just because you can doesn't mean you should. That is something to always keep in mind. In some cases, it can get you arrested and or cost you a whole lot of money. Just ask the Brazilian couple who's currently under investigation because they thought dyeing a waterfall was a good idea. It was not. It was completely obnoxious and uncalled for. The authorities in the Brazilian state of Mato Grosso, where this waterfall is located, are investigating whether or not any environmental damage was caused by introducing the dye into the water, because who knows what they put in it. Was it food dye? I mean, that's probably okay. Or maybe it's not. I don't know. I have no idea what messes things up downstream. Hopefully, that doesn't. Making matters worse, residents of the area are concerned about whether or not their water's now contaminated, as the river this waterfall flows into is their city's main source of water. During a drought, no less. Here's the bottom line. Maybe don't do something stupid like this. Probably a good way to go. Granted, this was probably, hopefully, harmless food dye and not some other crazy substance. But look at all the other crazy stuff we've seen with gender reveals, like when people have accidentally started forest fires, like shooting tannerite, etc. But still, this didn't have to happen. Everyone's trying to one-up each other for the sake of the imagery and impressing family and friends, and sometimes it's just not worth it. I can think of all kinds of cool things to shoot photos and or video of, but doing them just wouldn't be wise. So I don't. Altering the landscape without permission falls into the bad idea category, squarely. But these people didn't ask for permission, perhaps because they knew the answer would be a big fat no. Next. Further bolstering my long-held position that the DSLR is not long for this world, just look at the now 18 lenses for DSLRs which have now been discontinued by third-party lens maker Sigma, joining Tamron, Canon, Nikon, and others who've all looked at the data and have decided that continuing to make lenses for DSLRs just doesn't make sense. Or dollars. According to Amateur Photographer magazine in the UK, Sigma has steadily discontinued production of their lenses for DSLRs, including formerly popular lenses like their 70-200 2.8, their 300 2.8, and other lenses which used to do pretty darn well for the company. Granted, some of these, not all of them, got updated along the way to art versions, etc., but those don't sell as well as they used to either. Reason? People are buying into mirrorless. Just look at the sales data. It is what it is. It's irrefutable. Now, not on that list are two lenses that I've hung on to way too long and definitely need to sell. The Sigma 24-105mm f4 art series and the awesome 120-300mm f2.8 sport series beast. That thing's huge. Both of those in Nikon F mount. I haven't shot Nikon, as you know, in years. They're both in great condition, so if anyone out there listening is interested in either of them, email me at lensshark@gmail.com and we'll have a little chit chat about it. Anyhow, Sigma makes great glass and has for a long time. Same with Tamron. Not sure about Tokina. It's been years since I've shot one of their lenses. I know people are ridiculously happy with their crazy expensive cinema lenses, and I just checked and they actually make lenses for Fuji and other mounts. Who knew? Apparently not me. Canon RF, not one of the mounts they make, of course, because Canon. Next. One of the image editors that doesn't get nearly as much love as Lightroom, Capture One, Luminar, and the others is AC/DC. That's ACDSEE. Not spelled like the rock band, and there's no cool lightning bolt in the middle, sadly. Anyhow, AC/DC's Photo Studio Ultimate 2023 update is out, and as is becoming quite standard if you want to stay competitive these days, it features a host of AI-based features like Face Edit and AI Actions. With AI Face Edit, you select an image where a face is prominent in it, let's say a portrait for instance. The tool will scan and plot the face, and from there, you're able to edit individual parts like their eyes, eyebrows, the nose, the mouth, and even makeup. By adjusting the sliders, you can not only do things like whiten someone's teeth, you can adjust their upper and lower lip thickness individually, change their smile, their chin size, jawline, forehead, and cheekbones, all kinds of stuff. You get the idea here. You can make someone look not like themselves, basically. Make of that what you will. If you're doing work for clients and they want something changed, then, well, the customer is always right, even when they're not. Now, the other main new feature here, AI Actions, allows you to do things like pop a subject easily out of a background so you can change that background, Or maybe take that subject and put them into a completely different photo or what have you. You can also change the background to black and white and leave your subject in color, and you're able to select a sky with clouds and all and do a sky replacement. These are all basically the same thing if you think about it, but in action form. They're all masking actions. That's the bulk of the main new features right there. But in addition to those, other new features include search with logic, improved and faster quick search, as well as a new photo merge feature, including panoramic stitching, HDR, and focus stacking. There's also a new shape selection tool and further integration with Microsoft OneDrive. And of this, AC/DC COO and CTO Frank Lin says, quote, "The new features and enhancements help photographers edit photos and manage them in a variety of ways, all in an instant. By taking advantage of the new AI features and advanced search, photographers will find their process flowing smoother than ever before. Photo Studio Ultimate 2023 is the ticket to a future where artificial intelligence will help transcend a photographer beyond their limits." End quote. If this sounds like something you need in your life, AC/DC Photo Studio Ultimate 2023 is available right now for $150 US, and you own it. No subscriptions. And as with most of these programs, you can try it for free, which is something I highly recommend. Find the image editor that works best for how you like to edit. It might be AC/DC, it might be something else. You don't know until you try. Next. Now, last episode was assignment number 54, and our assignment sponsored by our friends at Fujifilm, and that was share your lines. And my favorite, tagged with my Fujifilm legacy so I could find them, was from Instagram user Mr. Daniel Kennedy. It's a gorgeous black and white shot of a high-rise in Cardiff, Wales in the UK, where all the lines from the exterior walkways converge on one point, and I absolutely love it. It is a beautiful shot. Now, for our next assignment, number 55, and again, you can pop around, do them in order, redo them, whatever feels good. Just have fun. Anyhow, number 55 is share your numbers. So maybe house numbers, numbers on signs, anything in numbers, really. Whatever it means to you, it's all good. Just have fun with it and make sure to use hashtag MyFujifilmLegacy so we can find it. And again, thanks to Fujifilm for sponsoring our photo assignments and for sharing out their favorites as well. Before we go, consider treating yourself while helping to support this show by using those mostly 20% off promo codes at lensshark.com/deals. And I'd like to thank you all for listening to episode 372 of the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. Don't forget to check us out at petapixel.com/podcast for the show notes and to see what else we have for you. If you head on over there, you can leave us a voicemail question that we can answer here on the show. Or if you don't feel comfortable leaving a voicemail, feel free to email me at lensshark@gmail.com. And if you'd like to connect with me personally, hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Vero, or Facebook, where I'm LensShark. That's LENSSHARK. Don't forget the 2 S's in the middle there. I'm not Len Shark. I'm not responsible for what that guy says. All right, with that, I'll see you all in episode 373. Well, it's f8 and 2/50 of a second outside. It's time to shoot.
Please subscribe to the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. My daddy is the host.